You ever wonder how an AI can write a beautiful, creative poem 1 minute and then turn around and give you a super precise, factual summary the next? Well, the secret isn't what it thinks. It's all about how it chooses the very next word. So let's dive in and unpack the creativity knobs that really shape an AI's personality. Seriously, everything an AI says boils down to this one simple question. Every single time you get a response, the model is answering this question over and over and over again, sometimes hundreds of times just for one sentence. So how does it actually do it? You see, at its core, a model like GPT is just a massively powerful prediction engine. It's not thinking the way you and I do, it's calculating. And every single one of those calculations starts with a simple idea of probability. Okay, this is the first thing you absolutely have to get. It doesn't write whole sentences or paragraphs all at once. It writes one token at a time. You can think of a token as a word or sometimes just a piece of a word. Then it looks at the new sequence it just made to predict the next token. It's like a chain reaction, one link at a time. So check this out. This chart basically visualizes a model's thought process. After seeing the capital of France is, the model calculates a probability for every possible word that could come next. Paris is a clear favorite, right? It's at 80%. But notice, other words like London and Berlin still have a small chance of being picked. This is so important. So if the model knows Paris is the most likely answer, why doesn't it just pick it every single time? I mean, it seems logical. Well, it turns out that leads to a surprisingly big problem. A system that always picks the most predictable option isn't just boring, it's actually kind of broken. And this is what happens when the AI is too perfect. If you program it to always pick the most probable word, you get stuck in these repetitive, robotic loops. It's predictable to a fault, and it sounds anything but human. So the solution is pretty counterintuitive. We have to make the AI less perfect. We need to tell it to sometimes ignore the most obvious choice and pick a slightly less probable but maybe more interesting option. This idea of controlled randomness is the real key to making AI text sound natural. So how do we control all this randomness? We use three main settings, which I like to think of as the AI's creativity knobs: temperature, top K, and top P. The first and maybe the most important knob is temperature. To put it simply, it adjusts those probability scores we saw earlier. It can make the model either more daring and creative or more cautious and safe. Look at this comparison. On the left, with a low temperature, the high probabilities get even higher, and the low ones get totally squashed. The model becomes very cautious and will almost always pick Paris. But on the right, a high temperature kind of flattens those probabilities out. Paris is still the favorite, but now London and Berlin have a much better fighting chance. It's a direct trade-off. Do you want accuracy or creativity? Our next knob is top K. Now this one is a really straightforward filter. Instead of letting the model choose from thousands and thousands of possible words, top K just says, nope, you can only choose from the top K most likely options. That's it. So if we set K to 3, the process is dead simple. The model first calculates all the probabilities. Then it identifies the top 3 candidates. In our example, that's Paris, London, and Berlin. It throws away every other word in its vocabulary and makes its choice only from that small curated pool. This is a great way to prevent it from picking a truly bizarre low probability word. The third knob, top K, is a bit more clever. Instead of picking a fixed number of words like top K, it picks a fixed amount of probability. It creates a nucleus of the most likely words that all add up to a certain probability goal. Here's a perfect example. If we set P to 0.9 or 90%, the model starts with the most likely word, Paris, which covers 80% of the probability. To get to our 90% goal, it just needs to add the next word, London, which is another 10%. And that's it. 80 plus 10 is 90. It stops there, discards everything else, and makes its choice. You can see how this is way more dynamic than top K. So why do we need all these different knobs? It's because by combining them, we can precisely tune the AI's behavior for different tasks. We're pretty much shaping its personality. In the real world, these knobs are never used in isolation. It's a delicate balancing act. Developers are constantly mixing and matching these settings to get an output that is accurate when it needs to be diverse enough to be interesting, and, coherent enough to actually make sense. And here's a practical takeaway for you. If you need factual answers, Like for a Q&A bot or a summarization tool, you'd use lower randomness settings, low temperature, maybe a tight top P. But if you want a partner for brainstorming or writing a story, you crank those settings way up to encourage creativity and maybe even some unexpected ideas. But here's the flip side. When you turn those creativity knobs up too high, you seriously increase the risk of the model just making things up. And this is exactly what we call hallucinations. The AI samples a word that is statistically plausible, but factually incorrect, all in the name of being more creative. Okay, let's put this all together. It is so important to remember that none of this is thinking. It's a sophisticated, mechanical process of sampling based on statistics. This is the entire loop from start to finish. It gets your input, breaks it into tokens, and generates probabilities for what could come next. Then it applies temperature to adjust those probabilities, uses top K or top P to filter the choices, and finally samples one token from that final pool. Then it adds that new word to the input, and the whole loop starts all over again for the very next word. If you only remember one thing from all of this, let it be this. GPT is not a conscious being. It is an incredibly advanced statistical machine that predicts probabilities and samples tokens one after another to build its responses. And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating final thought. We now have these powerful knobs to control an AI's creativity and its randomness. So the big question moving forward is, can we fine-tune these